This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Opposition coalition in Mali calls for a transition to civilian rule within 2 years. Protesters in South Africa march against gender-based violence. And Egypt fears possibility of a second wave of coronavirus infections. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. Here's what's coming up in the world of sport. Dar Leopards thump Arusha Rhinos 45-5 in a one-off rugby tournament in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. We begin in Mali, where France has joined calls for the immediate transition to a civilian government in the West African nation. Paris wants the military junta to ensure a quick return to civilian rule. Armed Forces Minister Florence Parly warned in a statement on Sunday that terrorists could take advantage of the current crisis. The country has been struggling to contain an Al-Qaeda and ISIS insurgency in the Sahel region. Earlier on, the protest coalition that campaigned against former President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta proposed that the military junta that ousted him organize a transition to civilian rule within 24 months. After announcing they would postpone a meeting with civic groups, Mali's new military rulers received representatives of the June 5 movement late on Saturday. Well, in South Africa, women have once again taken to the streets to raise their voices against gender-based violence. This comes as cases continue to rise. According to South African Police Services, 5 women died within 24 hours in the past week alone in the hands of men they knew for a long time. CGTN's Ulysses Jamela has more.
Gender-based violence here in South Africa just continues to escalate. In fact, it dramatically increased after government announced the national state of disaster to fight the coronavirus pandemic.
Call him out. I'm not going to be grateful for you for doing the right thing. Call him out. So we're here together.
Protest marches against gender-based violence have now become a familiar sight here in South Africa. Frustrated women and some men often take to the streets to voice their concerns and list their demands from government.
What do we want? Justice! What do you want it?
This time, the anti-gender-based violence movement staged a peaceful protest at the Union Buildings, South Africa's government seat. They say they're here to show solidarity with victims of gender-based violence, to also show their exasperation and anger with the lack of change in the situation.
These violent, dehumanizing acts carried out by men have scared our nation and have instilled fear in the hearts and lives of many of us. We do not want to hear about another life being taken by man. We do not want to hear about a brutal, violent act committed by a man. The promises of change we hear time and time again have not taken place. Today we remind you again, enough is enough.
These young protesters, mainly from universities, came with a list of demands.
We demand an immediate report from all levels of government detailing what it has genuinely done to combat gender-based violence. We demand frequent meetings with government officials and stakeholders on women and queer empowerment in the community. We demand bail to be removed as a possibility for all those charged with and those with a history of sexual offences.
Other demands include that police be given a thorough gender-based violence sensitivity training. Their list of demands was handed over to a government representative from the South African presidency. Earlier this week, President Cyril Ramaphosa announced that 1.6 billion rand would be allocated to an emergency response plan that will focus on eradicating gender-based violence.
Our cries are still unheard. More women are dying. Money has been put into place to stop gender-based violence, but we still see more women dying, more children dying at the hands of men.
For how long is it just going to be women standing in this fight? We are not going to be silent no more.
On Monday, ministers who form part of the security cluster will address issues relating to the capacity of the criminal justice system to combat this scourge. Julisan Jamala for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
A boat carrying migrants has burst into flames off the coast of southern Italy as its passengers were being transferred to Italian naval vessels to take them to port. 2 of those injured include Italian officials who were trying to save those on board by taking them off the boat. The vessel was reportedly approached by an Italian naval ship that was in the process of taking migrants on board. It suddenly caught fire, most likely because of a fuel leakage, then exploded. The number of victims is still unknown. Egypt's cabinet says it fears that the country could be on the verge of a second wave of COVID-19 infections. The statement comes as the health ministry reported 223 new coronavirus infections on Friday, up from 89 this past Saturday. The ministry has also reported 20 deaths, bringing the country's total death toll to 5,517. Yarsa Kim has that story.
Walking in the Cairo streets, you can see many Egyptians who are wearing masks and keeping their social distance. However, there are also a significant number of citizens who are not abiding by these measures, whether in the city or on the summer vacation beaches.
I admit others and myself began to take these measures lightly because the number of cases has dropped a lot compared to other countries and our population rate. That's why we're not sticking to regulations. Yes, it's wrong. As you can see, the numbers are rising again.
As you can see, I'm wearing the mask. I wear it most of the time. I don't shake hands with anyone and I keep social distance. I can't risk it. This is my life I am protecting. This issue should not be taken lightly.
Underestimating the COVID effects comes after a major drop in cases, from over 1,000 cases per day in May and July to less than 100 in mid-August.
Until recently, Egyptians have been wearing masks and strictly abiding by the measures, but now most of the people are not wearing it, whether in the street, offices or transportation. That's because they are bored after months of wearing it, and the drop in patient numbers has also encouraged them to take it off. The result is an expected second wave.
An alarming daily increase of cases this week has prompted the health minister to issue a stern warning that a second wave of the pandemic is underway. Experts believe action has to be taken immediately.
The Prime Minister has ordered police and security officials to adapt the strict punishment on people who are not following the health measures. There are hefty fines from 400 to 4,000 Egyptian pounds. Companies will also be punished if their employees are not wearing masks.
The Prime Minister has ordered isolation facilities to reopen in anticipation of a second wave of COVID-19. Meanwhile, officials have threatened that if daily cases don't drop soon, the country will face another lockdown. Yasser Hakim, CGTN, Cairo.
Well, China is continuing to assist in the battle against the coronavirus in Africa. The Chinese government has deployed 8 medical experts to Guinea to support the government tackle COVID-19. The medical team arrived yesterday at the Conakry International Airport. The team includes nurses, experts in lab technology, as well as critical care and infectious disease units. The team hopes to share its experience with Guinean doctors with the hope of implementing a joint response plan against COVID-19 in that country. Chinese experts will also provide patients with free medical services. Guinea had previously received several donations of food and medical equipment from China, proof of the good cooperation between the two countries.
China will continue to work to implement the achievement of the G20 World Health Assembly Summit and the China-Africa Extraordinary Summit on Solidarity against VIDOC to ease the burdens of Guinea and provide additional support to Guinea to end this disease. Since the start of COVID-19, the different countries of the world have been heavily hit, especially African countries where the public health system is fragile. So helping our friends in African countries to better cope with COVID-19 is a top priority of the Chinese government in the international fight against the virus.
Well, it's time now for us to take a short break and return. The Chinese foreign minister calls for greater cooperation between Europe and China to improve the improvement of global relations. And Tunisia's fruit exports dropped by 41% amid coronavirus lockdowns.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. We go to Europe now, where the Chinese foreign minister is on a 5-nation tour, his first overseas trip since the coronavirus outbreak. In France, he called for stronger cooperation with Europe and said it's possible for China and the EU to wrap up an investment treaty by the end of this year. He said China is committed to peaceful development, multilateralism, and globalization. He also said that he hoped France and other European countries could help ease tensions between China and the US. He said Beijing remained open to dialogue with Washington. Our correspondent Tony Waterman has more.
A lot of this event actually ended up focusing on this triangular relationship between China, Europe, and the United States. These are the three most important, powerful, and influential regions in the world. And as we know, the relationship between China and the United States has soured under a Trump administration. And at times, Europe has found itself caught in the middle. So part of this week-long trip, in part, is to try to counterbalance some of that U.S. influence in Europe by bolstering the China-EU relationship. And Wang Yi said today that he hoped that Europe would help ease some of those tensions. But of course, the United States was not the only thing that was discussed. During his 40-minute speech, the foreign minister also highlighted China's emergence from poverty, something which was largely aided by globalization. And he said that China stands ready to uphold multilateralism, that it will keep its markets open. And he noted that of the world's top 500 companies, 490 of them have either businesses or manufacturing or both inside of China, and that China is also the leading trade partner for about 130 different countries. So he also talked about deepening ties, not just with France, but also with Europe around things like developing a vaccine to fight the coronavirus or helping to solve climate change, development in Africa, and also this transition to a greener, more digital economy. So his parting message as he gets ready to head off to Germany was that globalization is the trend of the world right now, and China stands ready to engage.
The White House says President Donald Trump is ready to provide law enforcement support to any state that requests it. The statement comes after nearly a week of unrest in Kenosha in the state of Wisconsin. Protests erupted there after the police shooting of Jacob Blake. President Trump is set to visit the city on Tuesday. He plans to meet with law enforcement and survey property damage. Well, Japan's ruling party is expected to choose Shinzo Abe's successor in about 2 weeks. Local media is reporting interest from Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga. Suga is seen as a close aide of outgoing Prime Minister Abe. In 2012, Abe chose Suga for Chief Cabinet Secretary, the top government spokesman. Other contenders are former Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida and former Defense Minister Shigeru Ishiba. Abe announced on Friday that he was stepping down due to health concerns. However, he plans to stay on until a successor is named. Meanwhile, there has been mixed reaction around the Japanese capital, Tokyo, over Abe's decision to stand down. Many say they're saddened by the news, but others feel change was needed at the top.
I have a high evaluation of Shinzo Abe. Whether it is a diplomatic problem or a domestic problem, I feel that he really supported us. So in that sense, I am grateful.
Well, in central Kenya, what was seen by some as a Western culture is alive and thriving. When the country gained independence in 1963, British colonialists fled, but they had transferred a skill that has been important to the locals since then. Cheesemaking has since been passed on from one generation to another. Today, it is a lifeline for a section of the community. CGTN's Nick Mudimba tells us more.
Gataragwa Farmers Cooperative Society, located in central Kenya, started all the way back in 1920s. This facility was owned by a European family, and after independence they left it to the natives, and the farmers here continued the skill of making cheddar and mozzarella cheese. One by one, riders carrying liters of milk from different farmers in this community arrive as early as 7 a.m. All these ready for cheese making and supplies around the region.
Testing the milk.
But first, before the milk is accepted, quality control is a mandatory procedure here. Freshness and zero signs of bacteria and other pathogens are checked. The milk is then put into a water jacket for pasteurization. This is not your everyday milk pasteurizing water jacket. It has been here for more than 100 years. Large quantities of milk are needed, which only 10% is turned into cheese. Bernard Nderitu has worked here for more than 20 years. He's one of the cheese makers who acquired the skills from their grandfathers and fathers.
You heat that milk from 65 degrees Celsius to 78 degrees Celsius. From there you cool it down to 33 degrees Celsius. That's where you do the incubation.
In the incubation process, an enzyme called rennet is used to coagulate the milk to form a curd, and because this is the cheddar type of cheese being made, they use culture enzyme. The source of heat is also different here. It's a 100-year-old furnace connected to a boiler tank that supplies all the hot water. The water supplied into the water jacket is used for the pasteurization process. It's all about high temperature and a short time.
Once your curd forms after 20 minutes, you take the curd knife and cut it into pieces. From there you give it like 10 minutes so that the curd can be strong.
After that, milling is done to allow ease during salting. Everything is manual. Once the salting is done, the salted curd is put into containers ready for compression. Here, all the remaining milk is drained, and after 2 days, the end product is cheddar cheese. The century-old society belongs to the community. It's well managed and owned with pride. All the equipment used here are more than 100 years old.
We are always motivated here. All of us, nearly all the villagers here have gone to school, courtesy of this society.
But they have a share of their challenges. The COVID-19 pandemic has slowed them down. Only farmers from the area buy their cheese.
The cheese is good for human health. Too bad we currently don't have a market.
Previously, we used to process 400 to 600 kilograms of milk, but the market has been affected because of COVID-19. We now process 200 to 300 kilograms. The market has changed.
The remaining milk from the society is collected and distributed to other areas in central Kenya.
Over 100 years and counting, and farmers here celebrating the fact that this skill has been moved from generation to generation. The main desire now is to get new equipment to boost what they've loved doing for so many decades. Nick Mudimba, CGTN, Nyeri County, Kenya.
Well, Tunisia's fruit exports dropped by 41% due to coronavirus-induced lockdowns that affected supply chains and hampered delivery to key markets. Data from the Interprofessional Fruit Grouping in Tunisia shows the exports also lost 27% of their value in the last 8 months. This was after exports declined to $18.5 million from $26 million generated a year earlier. CGTN Adnan Shuashi reports.
Tunisia's Ministry of Agriculture announced that the North African state exported around 19,000 tons of fruits from January to the end of August 2020. This was a reduction from the 31,000 tons that were exported over the same period last year by Tunisian companies after the COVID-19 pandemic slowed trade.
Fruit exports are facing many problems since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic. Exports to the neighboring main markets of Libya, the Gulf countries and Europe stopped due to interruption of air cargo.
The Director General of Agricultural Production added that closing the border crossings of Ras Jdir and Hiba between Tunisia and Libya since March negatively affected the export of fruits as well as the transport sector.
Libya remains the first market for Tunisian fruit exporters, especially the summer fruit production. Land transport was interrupted due to health concerns. The recent launch of a direct maritime line between Sfax and Tripoli, which is dedicated to fruits and vegetables, has slightly improved the situation.
Tunisia's Interprofessional Fruit Grouping has been giving incentives to exporting companies in order to encourage fruit exports during and after the pandemic.
Air freight was a temporary solution during the crisis to export to the Gulf region, but flights were irregular. The cost also increased by 100%. Tunisian authorities supported local fruit exporters by paying 50% of the total cost.
According to the Ministry of Trade, watermelons make up 1/3 of exports, about 6,000 tons, and were mainly meant for Italy, France and Libya. In addition, 5,656 tons of peaches were exported, with 80% to the Libyan market, along with 2,000 tons of apricot, 1,000 tons of plums, and 960 tons of almonds. The Tunisian Union of Agriculture and Fisheries has announced the reopening of the Libyan market in the next few days. Hundreds of trucks will be able to cross the border into Libya and to distribute tons of fruits and vegetables in the neighboring country. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
From rugby to soccer, here's what's coming up in your sports after the break. Dar Leopards thump Arusha Rhinos 45-5 in a one-off rugby tournament in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt,
along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
We begin our sports coverage in Tanzania, where Dar Leopards thumped big rivals Arusha Rhinos 45-5 in a one-off rugby tournament in the country's commercial capital, Dar es Salaam. Rugby is a minor but growing sport in Tanzania. Organizers say the event was focused on growing sport support for the game in the country.
It's only a shame that there is only 1 or 2 other clubs in Tanzania. There's a team in Tanga, there's a team in Arusha, but that's about it. So a lot of the time we're forced to go up to Kenya to play matches. So we're trying to again, encourage development here so we can get more people involved.
A lot of players couldn't come, so we had a bit of a mishmash team, not necessarily our experienced players. But what was great is we had a lot of youth players. We had a lot of guys from our development rugby program who had a chance to really step up today and play against senior rugby for the first time. A lot of them have come from under-18s, and so now they're up against the big players.
Lionel Messi